welcome back to Lost in Roshar, the ultimate journey through the Stormlight Archive. I'm Christian Kremling.
And I'm Jimmy Stormblessed. Today we are diving into chapters 50 and 51 of The Way of Kings. This is wrapping up, part 3 of The Way of Kings, Christian?
Yes, the end of part 3.
End of part 3. So here's a question. We're going into the interludes, and I never know. Is this part 3 interludes, or are they the part 4? They're the part 3 interludes, right?
Yeah, part 3 interludes.
Okay. Because then it says part 4 in the book. That should be the dead giveaway. But I'm always like, I don't know where to group them, you know?
Just the next ones, you know?
Yeah, the next, whatever.
The next interludes.
Yeah, so we're going to get into all the spoilers, coming into these 2 chapters and wrapping up this part, maybe kind of getting an idea of where we're going, where we've been. So if you haven't read the Stormlight Archive, and that means all 4 books, don't listen to this. Come back to it later, but still download it so it boosts our numbers, please. But for everyone else, hey, welcome to the first episode of 2024.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, how's it feel, Christian?
You know what? My hair's gone grey. My hunchback has gotten worse, and I've stumbled into the new year with a sense of a purpose. I'm hobbling towards wind and truth. Oh, dude!
I want everyone to know that you were lying. I can actually see you right now, and there's no gray hair, and his hunchback is not. He looks like a Chad. He looks like a total unit right now.
I'm in peak Chad mode because I'm traveling at the moment. I'm in New Zealand. This podcast stops for no one, or no amount of travel will stop this train from.
Except when I travel and I go, well, I'm not showing up.
He was like, you know what? Find someone else. I'm going to Vegas.
Well, I like to think that you are the backbone of this, and I'm kind of like the dressing, like I'm the pizzazz, if you will, of this show. But you are required to be here at all times.
I have to keep this running. I keep the lights on, and you're the pizzazz. You're the yin to my yang, mate.
Yeah, and, I do a lot of the administrative stuff, but you edit it, you make it sound all nice and pretty. You got some amazing art clips that you throw on. You timestamp stuff. Folks, Christian does a whole lot of work for this podcast.
I can't do the reads. No one can read a Stormlight quote like Jimmy Stormblessed, and nobody can read a span read like Jimmy Stormblessed. I start stumbling. I get bored hearing my own voice. But Jimmy keeps it fresh. He gives us those fresh voice acting takes.
Takes everything I have to get through them without stumbling. And sometimes I do stumble. Sometimes I mispronounce things. But we will have a span read, maybe multiple, but definitely at least one span read at the end of this episode. And I think we're going to be doing a span read almost every single episode because we have, maybe 100. I don't know. There's so many that we have to read. That we need to take out at least little maybe 5-15 minute time period of every episode and do a span read. We'll save it to the end, for the once we get the tinfoil hats out at the end, because some of these theories are absolutely crazy. I really like the one we got today by Giancarlo, I believe. Is that the name?
Yeah, yes. And when you say we got this today, we got this like in October. Like September.
Actually, it was September. Yeah, it was all the way back in September. And it's still relevant to, the things that we've been talking about in the chapters. But I just love the way that Giancarlo wrote this email. I thought it was fantastic. So I'm excited to get to that towards the end. But outside of that, we know that the rough draft is done for the Wind and Truth. That's the update this episode.
100%, baby.
Crazy.
And he's already halfway through the final version, of course, or the second draft, because he's Brandon Sanderson. And it just felt real, once that confetti, shot off and Sando wore his 100 hat, I was like, baby, we're here. This is it. I'm ready. And you can feel the hype. You can feel it from this moment. Everyone's the storm. Do you remember like that time in YouTube when Rhythm of War was coming out? And it was just everywhere. And now it's beginning. I told you guys, the shocked faces in front of like random Stormlight pictures on the thumbnails, they're everywhere. It's already happening.
But they don't have custom art like us.
No, mate. We've got that handcrafted Kaladin,
That's right. That's right.
We've got that. Yeah. We've got the real stuff here. But I just can't believe it's happening. We also got the update. I did a poll, actually. I did a sneaky poll without consulting you because I was just reeling. I was reeling from the news that there's I knew there was going to be a 10 to 15 year in-world break from Stormlight 5 to 6. Not a bloody real world 10-year gap. Mate, we've got to write this Lost in Roshar reread for 10 years. What are we going to do?
Bro, it is. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I was going to say. We have this good news, but there is something kind of looming over this, for me at least, because like we knew book 5 was coming out. It's not the one thing that you have to give Brandon Sanderson is when he says something's going to happen, it's going to happen within the relative time period of which he's talking about. So like we all knew book 5 was coming out barring any awful circumstances. So I'm happy, and it's cool that it's here almost, but this is a big black cloud over this for me, because as everyone already knows, ad nauseum, I repeat it, Stormlight's the thing I love. The cosmere is the nice sprinkles on the side. I will say, starting this podcast, talking to you, having some listeners write in, I'm more intrigued by the cosmere than ever before, but still I'm here for Stormlight, and we're talking about 2033. I mean, that's 9 years.
Oh, it hurts. Then I will be fully gray-haired and disheveled.
I will be 42.
Jimmy, midlife crisis, blessed.
Like, we're not talking 42 and the series is finished. 42 when I read the next book, dude.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know, man.
I know, it's like my kids are going to be like with me. My future kids don't have kids yet, but you know, there is a world where I could be reading it with like my almost adult child, the book 10. That is like mind-blowing to me. But look, this is what I asked the good people of Lost in Discovery / Lost in Roshar. I said, with the recent news that we are most likely won't be reading Stormlight 6 until 2023, how are you coping? The options were mild existential crisis. Then I survived A Song of Ice and Fire. I can survive anything. Glad it will give me time to enjoy other works. I'm happy that there will be a large gap between eras, or I'm not coping at all. What did you vote for, Jimmy, if you did at all?
I survived The Song of Ice and Fire. I can survive anything, because endings actually aren't that important to me. And to be honest with you, well, let's talk about the poll, and then I'll kind of give my take about this. Because I've kind of settled down a little bit. I am still somewhat bummed, but endings aren't everything to me. Though with Brandon Sanderson's book, it also depends on the book, right? Like, for instance, when I was reading Dark Tower, everyone's like, oh, the ending this, the ending that. And I'm like, I was here for other things other than the plot at times. A Song of Ice and Fire plot is amazing to me. And I want it, but there's so much I can still love without the story being finished that I'm okay with that. With Stormlight and Brandon Sanderson books, because everything is so tightly plotted, I do actually want to see the ending. You know what I mean? Like, of course I want to see everything ending, but like, it really matters to me in this. So I find myself kind of going against my I don't care about ending sentiment with this series a little bit more. With that said, would it ever change? Let's just say Brandon Sanderson comes out tomorrow and says, I'm quitting. I'm going to make Fortnite skins for the rest of my life, and that is the only thing I'm going to do. I would be okay, because nothing will change how amazing Words of Radiance was when I first read it, or Oathbringer blowing my mind, or how painfully mid Rhythm of War was. Like, nothing will change that. I had to throw that jab.
I was like, this is way too complimentary for Jimmy. Like,
Christian winced. He winced when I said it. I saw it. It was the physical reaction. No, I'm only kidding. But you know, these experiences are reading back through with you now, right? Chapter by chapter. Nothing will change those things, and we'll find things to appreciate about the books. But there's a lot of breadcrumbs that, of course, we would like to see resolved. So if I can survive A Song of Ice and Fire, I can survive anything. What about you?
I'm having a mild existential crisis over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seriously made me ponder mortality. I'm not even kidding. I was like, 10 years. I haven't really thought 10 years ahead until this moment. I was like, whoa, what's my life look like in 10 bloody years? Probably the same with just book 6 in my hand. But I've settled a little, because it made me reframe what book 5 is in my mind.
Yes, this is where I was going with it. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, wow, this actually is an ending. I think he's going to kind of wrap this up in a sense, much more than I was anticipating. For some reason, I thought it would be like a bit more cliffhangery, or, you know, a standard ending of a Stormlight book. Okay, see you back next time. But I think it's going to be like, whoa, big game-changing ending stuff.
I was expecting an exclamation point with a ... at the end, and I still think that that's going to be the case because there's going to be things that aren't actually solved here, and there's going to be new threads that we're going to have questions about, especially with the time jump. However, I think there might be 2 exclamation points on this sentence.
Yeah.
For a metaphor, because I think this is kind of an end. I've been hearing people talk about this actually in the fandom and online and stuff. People are saying, "Oh, the last book in Stormlight's coming out this year," and I'm like, "No, there's more." They're like, "No, but this is like the end of the first half." Like people are treating it like a finale, and that has to, I assume. And this is me going out on the branch to be wrong on the internet, as I usually am, but it almost feels like that might be what Brandon is also saying. The vibe that he's giving off when he talks about this book, I think this is going to feel more like an ending than we imagined, and that's why I think I'm going to be okay waiting for book 6.
I think so too. And for me, right, when I read the other 4, I don't really feel like we're in the last act. I think that's the thing that has tripped me out of, like, I don't feel like the ending's coming, because I just feel like we've got a lot more ground to cover. For some people, yeah, like Dalinar, he's going to have his last hurrah. But a lot of other characters like Kaladin and Shallan, I feel like we're still getting started, I'll
be honest, bro. I think that these characters are going to go into a different type of status, whether it be mythic or godly. I think, or they're just going to be relegated to the side at some point, or they're going to be history or something. I think some of the younger characters, like I think Renarin actually could end up having a role in the back half. Lift is clearly one of the characters that are going to be focused on, and then we have the heralds. I think this might tie up our character arcs for these folks, at least in the zoomed in perspective, I guess is how I would say it.
Yeah, I could see that. Where we still see them, but yeah, not from this intense character study way that we have for the past 4 books. It just makes me curious about characters like Yasna who are still queued up to have a flashback.
A flashback. Yeah, that's a good point though. You bring up a good point. That's true.
So I think we'll just be left with those question marks. Some things will just be like a bummer for 10 years, but I feel like, or not.
Bro, does Yasna die and someone's going through her journals and then we get the flashbacks in that book?
I think there was, I don't know if he said it, but somebody said that just because there's a flashback book lined up for them doesn't mean necessarily that they're alive, which lines up with what you're saying. But you know what? I got slightly frustrated because I was reeling from this info, and some people were like, "Bro, why are you so upset? Like, we knew this. We knew it was good." No, we didn't, because I made a video.
It was 5 years, right?
Yeah, it was, because I remember A State of Sanderson. This was a few years ago. And at the beginning of one of my videos, it's me being like, "Oh, when's Stormlight 6 coming out?" And at that time, Sando said 2028. That was fine.
That's what I remember. I remember it being about 5 years. And I think even at the time, people were saying maybe 6 years.
Yeah.
This is almost double that time. I mean, that's true. That is actually true. He said that at some point. Is it the biggest deal in the world? No, but it definitely reshaped my expectations about the series because, who knows what can happen or whatever, but like, there's a chance I'm not alive to see the end of this thing, which is a crazy thing to think about, especially when putting hours and hours and hours of time to do this kind of thing. We've talked about how much time goes into reading these chapters and combing through the details and Googling and, looking at emails and stuff. It's just like weird to think that like maybe we don't see that finish line possibly. It's a crazy, scary thing. Yeah.
It's okay. Our AI avatars will.
I mean, whatever. If we got to do it, we got to do it. How do you feel though? Like, how do you feel temperature check for the other stuff that's being announced?
Okay. Well, there's a 4-year gap from the actual whole cosmere, which is even bigger news, I would say, actually.
Yeah.
Like for all cosmere, it's just like a silent room for 4 years. So
is that adaptation time, you think, where he's going and working on stuff?
Maybe. I feel like, it's like a pause for the cosmere novels. But we'll be getting other things, certainly, in those 10 years. You know what? By Stormlight 6, I'm sure there's a Mistborn franchise.
You think?
Like a movie franchise, or at least the first, it's real. It's a real thing by then, whether it's still in production or not. It's like, finalized.
Well, he seems to be talking a little bit more optimistically about this stuff now. And just a few months ago, remember, we were talking about how he was kind of like Mistborn is shell. Like he was basically saying like, I don't have confidence this thing's going to get done. But I've been seeing a lot of people making it seem as if he's more optimistic about the adaptation again. And I'm just like, well, this yo-yo is throwing me for a loop, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to track it just via Brandon's like takes at a particular time on stream and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it just feels like within 10 years, surely something's going to happen because in the end, it's a business and he's making so many waves in this world. There's no way it stops here. But you know what? You know what I did over that glorious week between Christmas and New Year's where you don't have to do really anything?
Yes.
Mate, Era 2 of Mistborn. It's been me in Era 2.
You read it all?
I'm in book 3. I'm about a third through book 3.
Okay.
With the infamous Lost Metal approaching, which I'm very curious to read because I know it had mixed reviews. Yeah, it's polarizing. But let me tell you, I've come around a little bit, okay? Because you and I were talking about the alloy of mid. We talked about it. And you know what? It still is the alloy of mid. I really dragged myself through the mud. I was like, I'm finishing this damn book, even though I'm bored. I'm like, I'm doing it. And I got to the end of that. And I was like, you know what? He wrote this not knowing it was going to be a whole era. It was like a side project to be like, haha, let's see what tech looks like. All right, I'll give him a pass. Look, Sando's done a lot for me. We got to support our friends through the low times too. So I did Alloy of Mid. I was like, okay, 6 out of 10. I'll take it. And then I read Shadows of Self, bro. And this was like, oh, this is a Mistborn book. And the characters are more developed. And like, yes, the humor can be a bit cringe sometimes, but sometimes it actually hit. And then the ending was like one of my favorite Sando endings ever. What? I was like, dude, this guy went hard on the Shadows of Self ending. It was like a proper gut punch that was like, whoa, why don't people talk about this ending? It totally threw me for a loop. And I was like, damn, okay. And now I'm in book 3 and I'm like fully in it. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a great Mistborn series again. So wow. I think you just got to get through Alloy of Mid. I think we can all agree Alloy of Law is like, maybe in hindsight it's better. But he went hard on book 2. That's all I can say. He totally got me hook, line, and sinker. And I breezed through it in like 2 or 3 days. It was great.
Wow.
So,
I mean, that is...
I'm coming around, mate.
You know what? That means there's hope. Maybe there's hope for me after all. Maybe
there is hope, dude.
All the depressing literature I read and go have some fun for once.
It is really fun. It is fun, and the cosmere stuff is really cool. I know it's about to go off the rails with the cosmere stuff, so I'll see how, like, how much of a textbook it feels like, because you know how some cosmere info dumps can have your eyes glaze over. But he's got me into it, and the characters grew on me, and he grew them. He's developed them really well. So, yeah, I'll keep you guys posted. I reckon in about 2 more weeks I'll be done.
I'll tell you what. Yeah. Maybe we'll do a back half of an episode or something where we can talk. I'll try to make it a priority in the first half of this year to read those books. I'll do my best.
Yeah. You don't necessarily have to, but if you're thinking it from a Stormlight perspective, there's probably other things we should be reading. Because this is after. Get back
to Elantris, apparently.
Elantris I'm worried about, because everyone's just like, it's his first book. The writing's a bit shoddy, but, it's good in the end. The last 60 pages are
setting magic is amazing. I didn't like anything else much about it. But I will have to read it because Elantris 2 is on that schedule, right?
Yeah.
And that's the one that I think sounds the coolest possibly, because now we're going to get him as a better writer in that setting. And the setting is amazing. Like, I really loved the city. But we'll see. I mean, we got a lot of stuff. We got another, Ghost Bloods was on that list, which we hear about the Ghost Bloods today. And
Era 3. That's what Era 3 is called. In case you're wondering. Mistborn Ghost Bloods. That's going to be wild. I do wonder, like, am I a little scared as well with the Stormlight gap? because I'm like, I've done the tech jump from Mistborn 1 to 2, and I've adjusted. There's some cars and there's trains and stuff.
Automobiles.
There's automobiles. But it's so cool, man. They like shoot the ground and push off the bullets and start flying. It's very cool. But I don't know is he going to do that for Stormlight? Are we going to have some flying steampunk-esque?
There was a big jump in between 3 and 4.
There was a bit, with the flying vehicles.
And knowing everything that was discovered in book 4 about light. Yes. The answer is yes. I think it's going to be drastically different in 10 years. Yeah.
But I still think it'll be pretty cool. I don't think shard blades and stuff are going anywhere. I think
it better not.
I think it'll still be sick.
I'll be so mad if plate and armor, if plate and blades go away. I'll be pissed.
Yeah. I don't think they're going anywhere because they're just so iconic. Whereas like Mistborn, it's all about the metal. So naturally we're going to see metal in new forms, but I think shard blades are I don't think we're going to see like a shard, Uzi or something.
I mean, technically you could do a sharded cannon, right? Like,
could you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, sure. Why not? Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some crazy stuff. I don't think I think he'll know what to do.
We'll
trust Sander.
I mean, all I know is that we got 9 years of airtime to fill on this podcast. So
how tired are these?
We might go down to half a chapter a week.
A paragraph a week, dude. Jimmy, this paragraph was fire, man.
3 sentences, bro.
I was like, what am I going to talk about in like 2029? Guys, the hype for book 6 is building. Is anyone here?
There's a very realistic chance at some point that we do these, what we called road trips, which we talked about as a concept earlier, where maybe, we take a break between books 1 and 2 and we read Warbreaker, and we do that, in chunks of chapters. So this podcast is a marathon, not a race, right?
Yep.
And we'll have fun. And as long as we're having fun, that's all that really matters. So yeah, State of Sanderson, a lot of stuff that people are excited about, and a whole lot of me contemplating if I'll be alive by the end. So the poll, by the way, was 44% mild existential crisis. We had second place going to I'm not coping at all at 21%. 17% said I survived the Song of Ice and Fire, can survive anything. I think that also goes for Patrick Rothfuss's series, King of the Chronicle. And 13% says glad it'll give me time to enjoy other works. You brown nosers. And then 6%, I'm happy that there will be a large gap between eras. These 6% of people, who are you?
They're like 18, They're like,
yeah,
we'll get my life together. I'll be 28.
Old enough to listen to this show. No, I'm just kidding. For the family.
I should have just said, I should have changed it to I'm surviving a Song of Ice and Fire. I can also survive this. Like, it's not over.
It's not over yet. And we heard some of the spinoffs are going to be anime shows, and I'm ecstatic about it. But yeah, we can talk about it another time, but very exciting stuff. And a chance of a remake happening animated is actually, I would say, almost very likely. But we won't talk about that here on this podcast. We got to talk about these chapters. And folks, I know we're 23 minutes into the episode. You're like, you haven't covered the chapters. These chapters are pretty bare, to be honest with you. Chapters 50 and 51. We get a Shallan POV. We get a Kaladin POV. One's in the past, one's in the present, but both of show them at maybe their lowest points to this point in the story. And it's just interesting to think that Kaladin is almost on the other side of this thing in a new phase. Shallan is currently facing isolation with no one there for her. So they kind of mirror each other's character arcs, but we have the context that Kaladin is maybe coming out of this thing, which I think makes us wonder as readers going into part 4, how does Shallan find her bearings? Right. And it also gives a way for Shallan and Kaladin to relate to one another, whether they know it or not. So it's very carefully done, I think, to end this part like this. And they're good chapters. They're just really short.
They're very short. And I'm keen to talk about this Shallan chapter. I felt Yasna's glare all the way through the screen. I really did.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I guess we'll say chapter 50 is Backbreaker Powder. And the epigraph is as follows. Flame and char, skin so terrible, eyes like pits of blackness. A quote from the Iviad probably needs no reference notation, but this comes from line 482. Should I need to locate it quickly? So two things. One, this is obviously the Iliad, but
he's
but
like,
in Roshar.
what should I'm running out of text they're reading from. The Iviad, the Odyssey.
I mean, Brandon, can we just a little more? I mean, come on. Now, the other thing I thought was kind of interesting, and I wonder if maybe you could comment on this. Should I need to locate it quickly? Why would she need to locate this so quickly? Like, what about this?
I know, right?
That seems significant to me.
It's just like your average Australian on the beach, you know? Flame and char, skin so terrible, eyes like bits of blackness.
Boy,
oh mate.
I just watched a documentary on HBO about like a community of 10 people in Australia, and one of them dies. And it's about this lady who was making meat pies, and she was mad that the other guy started selling meat pies, so she murdered him.
Oh, this is like Australian Sweeney Todd or something.
Yeah, it's a documentary. I mean, it is. I don't know if I'm going to come down there, bro. You got people killing each other with meat pies.
We take our meat pies real serious.
Apparently.
It's a bloody religion down here. But no, Yasna's just, I think it's just for context. I really think it's just him like, ooh, look, these are her notes. You know, she's like, maybe I need to read around this line. Surely there's nothing more to it.
Surely. I mean, it could just be Brandon being like, I'm cheeky and putting the Iviad instead of the Iliad. My God. In before someone actually corrects me on the pronunciation, and it's not supposed to be a ripoff of it, but in my head,
the Evod, Jimmy.
Yes.
Jeez. Are you proud of me, dude? It's 2024, and I've resisted a tinfoil rabbit hole. I'm here to talk about some character work. You know, I'm not here to make a theory about locating texts. Get out of here, man. I'm better than that.
Turning a new leaf. I'm proud.
Thank you. Hey, man. Did we do a summary for these 3 pages?
Yeah, we'll do a summary because people are probably wondering what the heck we're talking about. So this is obviously Shallan. Shallan wakes up in a private hospital room feeling oddly healthy. A woman sees her wake and rushes out. Shallan has some trouble remembering what happened. So when she sees a guard looking in on her, she asks what happened to her. Though he doesn't answer, she suddenly remembers being poisoned and also capsule. Asking if he is all right, the guard only turns back, but when she tries to get up, he glares at her, causing her to stay in bed. She remembers that she returned the stolen soulcaster to Yasna. Half an hour later, Yasna comes in and demands to know who ordered her to steal the soulcaster. Shallan tells her that she stole it by her own volition to try to save her family from financial ruin, but Yasna is having none of that and tells her Capsule was trying to poison her all along with the bread and the jam contained the antidote so Shallan would survive and not Yasna, which is a pretty cool little point. Yasna tells Shallan how disappointed she is in her, and she now understands what it was, the guilt of the theft that drove Shallan to attempt suicide. No one will take her in as a ward now. She is thrown away as a promising career. Yasna leaves, leaving Shallan alone. And the words of this chapter are very sad, and that's why I wanted to make a point to mention the isolation and the loneliness that kind of impacts us at the end of this chapter, because I think that Kaladin goes from being in a group in his chapter as well and alone. But yeah, this chapter is kind of sad, kind of brutal.
The all hope is lost moment for Shallan. I always feel so bad for her when people are getting angry or piping up, and it takes her back to her honestly terrible childhood. Yeah. But Yasna did not pull any punches, man. She was bloody savage. And that line where she's like, I can see now why you tried to end your own life. It was the guilt, you know, just like so matter of fact. Oh, I can see why you tried to kill yourself. Yeah.
And I think you can also tell that Yasna is upset. Like she's hurt. I mean, we know she would never take a ward. She always kind of fought them off. And then she actually let down her shield to let Shallan in, and Shallan burned her. So I have sympathy for Yasna in this situation. I can't say that I wouldn't be angry as well.
Oh no, yeah, I feel bad, and it's the whole like I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, but I'm actually mad, you know, as well. Yeah. When she says like when Yasna was like, I hate being wrong, it's like oh yeah. I mean that's I'm disappointed, I'm not angry kind of moment, and it hurts.
And also, let's not forget that in this moment, Shallan has also found out the capsule who she was interested in was using her. And we'll say the antidote was for Shallan. Therefore, maybe he also felt something for her. So it's one of these things where she's now confused. She's probably hurt, but she's also probably sad, mourning the loss of Capsule, even if he did do a terrible thing. But Yasna is in the same moment mourning the fact that she was betrayed as well. So there's two betrayals here.
Yeah, they're both reeling on either sides of it. And rest in peace to Incel Capsule. He gave us a few laughs on the podcast. We'll miss him.
Yeah, we'll miss him in his jam. They have a thread in his memorial on 4chan, actually.
I bet. Doing God's work. But no, look, it is true that he did love her, though. I don't think there's any disputing that. I think, or at least he had he had feelings for Shallan. But Yasna is just like, no, it's all about me. She had her Walt moment. Wait a minute, this is all about me.
What a moment.
Yeah. The best part is that he's totally right in that moment. But yes, he was using Shallan to get to Yasna, and Yasna, I'm actually left here wondering how the heck do they repair this, because I don't know if it is the revelation that Shallan's also, soul casting and she's a radiant as well. Perhaps that's it at the end of the book. But to be honest, being so stuck in Mistborn for the past 2 weeks, I'm a bit discombobulated. I'm really lost on Roshar this week. I'm ready. I'm used to nice. Bowler hats and dueling canes and aluminium lined top hats.
I'm not gonna lie, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it does. It does. But you got to hear me out, man. The ending.
I'm over here with my jam and my bread. Okay.
Hey, dude. This is my party. I'm always Roshar's my number one. But hey,
I feel like you've been cheating.
I see you, Waxilium. I see you, man. I see you with your braces. I see that train chase. No, it's all good. But I'm just trying to think. You know what? When you were doing the summary, I totally missed a line where she woke up feeling oddly healthy. I'm guessing there are some spheres hanging about that she's doing some, unconscious healing, subconscious healing, like Kaladin. Surely you're connecting the dots at this point as a reader on your first time through. I was a little frustrated, as I do get with the misunderstanding trope. I wanted her to be like, hey, dude, I soulcast a bloody goblet into blood. So can we talk about that? I'm also seeing strange figures. Like, when she's about to tell Yasna, she does call out for her. But Yasna's not giving her a moment. So the impact of this chapter still hits on the reread. I felt it,
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's also just because Yasna's kind of a revered character. Like when I read her, I always feel like I need to pay attention to what she's saying, because one, she's very smart. Yeah. She's written that way, and she's always got information and weird stuff going on in the background, but you can tell Shallan really respects her as well.
Yeah, they had a good thing going. It's just sad to see it all crumble before our very eyes. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if there's much more that I was like, oh, good. Let's start with good theory. No real theories here. It's a pure character moment, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And kind of makes us wonder, where she goes from here. And then we get into chapter 51, which is Sas Non, or as I like to say, Sus Non. No, I was kidding. This is a flashback from 1 year ago in Kaladin's POV. Kaladin is waiting in one of Amaram's waiting rooms. Only 4 of his 26 men survived. He had actually begun to believe those who called him lucky. Numb, he thinks how he can now be considered among those who have killed a shard bearer, like Lanacin. I don't know if I'm saying that right. The Sure-footed, or Evod Markmaker, which we should look into these people, by the way. But he just doesn't care. Refusing the shards was probably the stupidest thing anyone has ever done. Definitely. But the thought of taking them revolts him. Amaram enters the room along with a storm warden. They are discussing the identity and motives of the shard bearer. The rest of the squad enters along some light-eyed officers. Amaram asks Kaladin why he charged the shard bearer and why he rejected the shards. Kaladin doesn't want to reveal his disdain for light eyes and becoming one of them, so he replies that he doesn't know why. Amaram makes a signal, then his soldiers slaughter the four spearmen, while Kaladin is held back by guards shrieking in anger and agony at seeing his men murdered. Amaram looks guilty, and he justifies his actions by saying that he is trained in the sword and that Kaladin would demand the shards back in a few days anyway. Since Kaladin saved his life, he will spare his. He will promulgate that story. He's going to tell that story that he Amaram killed the shard bearer and that Kaladin fled the scene, and the rest of the squad killed by the shard bearer. The Storm Warden brands Kaladin a slave, and this is how we figure out. Amaram was supposed to be one of the, and we think back, we talk about Kaladin and how iest he is, or iest, racist, whatever, however you want to say it. Classist is probably a better way to say it. Yeah, iest or classist. And he comes off so brash and honestly kind of an a-hole at some points in the beginning of the book, even though we do feel for him obviously being in that slave caravan. But this shows why he might feel like that. And then if you take the time to put yourself in his shoes, you would also probably feel this way as well. This is a tough one, and it kind of shows a lot of the reasons why Kaladin is so prickly.
Dude, it's the beginning of the burning hatred for Amaram within my soul. And it begins even before that, when he's like, hey, you remember me and my brother? Like, you recruited me at Roshar's place? And he's like, oh, yeah, I remember you. And he totally doesn't. Amaram, you just, you're meant to be better. You're meant to be better. One of the good ones. This is before we get Daddy Dalinar telling him off in Words of Radiance, which I can't wait for. But there's a lot of juice in this chapter, Jimmy. I don't know if you know about the behind-the-scenes workings of this, but there's a lot of big players mentioned in this chapter. A lot of, people behind the curtain pulling the strings. But before that, I did look up Lanacin the Sure-Footed and Evod Markmaker.
Yes, and I thought this was interesting.
Ooh, okay. Did you look them up?
I just did just now.
All right. Do you want to do 50-50? I'm doing Lanacin. You can get Evod.
Go for it.
Lanacin the Sure-Footed. This is like Westeros. Is a historical figure on Roshar. He is said to have killed a shard bearer and won a shard blade. He was presumably a Lethi, as there is a monument to Lanacin in southwest Kolinar. Oh, that's interesting. Kaladin knew of his story, which is what is mentioned here. And it says, either Lanacin the Sure-Footed or Evod Markmaker actually poisoned a shard bearer to obtain their shards, although this isn't well known. So this was a question that was asked at Dragonsteel. Of course, this is the best. Like, we are not alone in the obscure questioning. I mean, we're really not alone. I love how like someone can ask Brandon this question at Dragonsteel about these two guys, and he's primed with the answer. He's like,
he's been thinking about Evod a lot lately.
I love that there's like, this throwaway line, and there's like a rumor about Lanacin and Evod, like who poisoned,
Yeah.
Tell us about Evod, mate. I'm curious now.
Well, it's largely the same, but Evod was a Dark Eyes of legend that was known for killing a shardbearer and claiming his blade. There are many stories and songs about his deed. Evod is revered by Dark Eyes across Roshar, including Kaladin Stormbless when he was younger, and then we get the whole like poison thing as well.
I think it's Evod, mate. I think Lanacin, with his sure-footedness, would not need poison. Evod's, he's a nefarious. He's a, what did you say one time? Dastardly. He's a dastardly, poisoning little bastard. But okay, moving on from them two.
Might need to change your name to Christian Light Eyes over here. My goodness.
Hey, mate, I'd be taking those shards. I'd take those shards. I'd open my mana, and off I'd go. Did you notice the mention of our boy Thaidakar? Straight up.
Yeah. What is up with this? I underlined it, and I was like, that seems pretty on the nose.
Yeah. Why Thaidakar would risk this, Amaram was saying, speaking in a soft voice. But who else would it be? The Ghostbloods grow more bold. We'll need to find out who he was. Do we know anything about him? Okay. Interesting stuff. I'm just going to say something non-spoilery for other series, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler tag.
Okay.
So, non-spoilery, for the people who have just read Stormlight Archive, we know that Thaidakar is the leader of the Ghostbloods, and he's a very scary, ominous person mentioned by Gavilar in the prologue. Now, I'm going to get into spoilers a little bit for a lot of it, actually, for Mistborn Era 1. So if you haven't finished Mistborn Era 1, I'll timestamp it so we can talk a little bit. And then you can come back after we talk. So Thaidakar Kelsier, which is crazy that he's just being talked about so casually here.
10 years ago when this was written, 11 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah, right. So I don't think Amaram knows it's Kelsier at all. I think he just knows that Thaidakar is the leader of the Ghostbloods, and the Ghostbloods are against the Sons of Honor, which is the group Amaram's a part of, who are like, bring back the Knights Radiant, blah, 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 blah. Sons of Honor are being led by Kalak the Herald. And Kalak the Herald is like either in this scene or in the other room of this scene, which is kind of wild.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wait,
so, yeah,
no.
right. This is real juicy. So, when, at the end, when he's like talking to Kaladin after he's killed everyone, he's like, "You'd have demanded that I returned the shards to you. It took hours to decide, but Restares is right. This is what must be done for the good of Alethkar." Restares is like Kalak's, undercover name. So
it is?
Yeah, that's his undercover name, Restares. So, and it says earlier in the chapter he'd been talking with, his people to decide what to do for a while. So he's like, yeah, Restares is right. I've got to do this. So Kalak the Herald, the guy, the POV from the prelude chapter, is the reason Kaladin became a slave, which is crazy. Isn't that wild?
That is wild. And there's no way that he knew anything about Kaladin at this point, right?
No, I think it's one of those.
It's just happenstance.
I think it is cool happenstance coincidence moments.
Is it cool, Christian? Is it cool that he got a slave?
Oh, no. I've been put on
Listen
the spot.
to this light eyes over here.
Well, if he took the shards, his life would have been a lot better.
It's awful.
We're not here to change society, mate. No, Kaladin, stand up to them, spit in their face. But look, it hasn't worked out for him, evidently. But the thing is, I was like, is the Storm Warden Kalak? That's what I kept trying to think. I didn't go too far into it. But the descriptions didn't match up because he had like a square face and a beard. And Kalak is always, he's always described as like balding and a bit short and unassuming. So I was like, I don't think he's there, but he's around.
Yeah, he's clearly been in contact.
Yeah, he's either in the next room or he's just like an unnamed dude watching this happen, which is crazy. So I guess he's just like, we want more shards for ourselves. The reason why Kelsier is so interested in the Sons of Honor and Kalak and stuff is because Kalak is a herald and can like extend their life for so long and seemingly travel around. And that's what Kelsier kind of wants to know, the secrets of the heralds and how they're doing this. Which is, it just blows my mind how well this is threaded in even to the first Stormlight book.
Interesting.
I'm not sure. When did the Hero of Ages come out? I'm trying to think of when Mistborn Era 1 wrapped up. If it was, I think it was done pre Way of Kings. It might be around that 2010 era.
I'm looking it up right now. The public date, it was 2008.
Really? Wow, these books are getting on a bit. I wonder when he decided that Kelsier was going to be this like leader of this Ghostbloods syndicate, and he's going to infiltrate Roshar and everything. Or if Thaidakar was just like a placeholder name, and he was like, I'll make it one of my cool characters from.
I feel like he knew.
Yeah,
that's my hunch.
Kelsier is like one of his flagship characters, so he probably had a longer game plan, because he keeps saying like, Kelsier is like, take him out of Mistborn and he's like a sociopath, psychopath, which I didn't at least in my recollection of reading the first Mistborn, I didn't get like psychopath vibes or like sociopath vibes. He definitely does have like really hugely morally questionable moments, but I was never like, man, this guy's a sociopath. He's going to take over a planet. But maybe on a reread, those threads are there. Regardless, it's very cool to see how the big players are affecting our boy Kaladin here.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of speaks to the theme of the chapter, which is that a few Dark Eyes lives to spare thousands of Light Eyes lives is worth it to Amaram. And it's, the ends justify the means type deal. And that's a question that, I mean, we ponder all the time in the real world, and we get to ponder it here as well. And it's always a lot more difficult of a question to answer whenever you're, emotionally engaged with the person that it's actually affecting.
Yeah, easy for Amaram to say. Did
Amaram do anything wrong?
Oh, Jimmy's, and you're calling me Christian Light Eyes over here.
I'm just asking. I figured you'd have a biased answer since you're living in the palace now over there.
Hey, man, I picked up the shot.
And your plate.
Hey, I know a lot of Light Eyes in Australia. Okay, there's a lot of blue-eyed people here. They're cool. Okay. Did Amaram do anything wrong? Yeah. He
I would say so.
He need I say any more? I don't. He's so annoying. Like, really, do you really think you're bringing back the Knights Radiant, dude? You got this guy like sucking in Stormlight like it's bloody orange juice, and you branded him. I just, beyond all that, beyond the cool lore stuff, and we hate Amaram, it's like this is one of my favorite chapters just because he really goes there. He really goes there with the Kaladin chapters, and coming from Mistborn Era 2, there were some, you see some, characters go through a lot. And especially at the end of book 2, I'm not going to stop talking about it. It's really good. But no, he never goes as far as he does in Stormlight. Stormlight feels like, oh man, these characters are bloody suffering,
Yeah, they're down bad, you could say. Kaladin's at the lowest rung possibly of the social ladder, or at least a part of the group that's put at the bottom of that ladder. And it's tough to look at. It's hard.
And it's a great way to wrap up the part.
Yes.
When you think about the pacing of the Way of Kings, this is where it's starting to make sense. At first you're like, why are we in bookshops? Why are we walking around for, 20 chapters? Now you're like, damn, okay. All right. So we've hit our low point. Now it's time to start building to something. Part 4, and then slam it in part 5. And,
I was going to ask, is there a part 5? I couldn't remember.
I believe there's always 5 parts, and part 5 tends to be the Sanderlanche. So yeah, we've got part 4, which is our build-up, Storm's Illumination, and then the Silence Above, where it's just going to be banger after banger.
Yeah, and both characters with a pretty sad note to end on, but at least Kaladin, we know, is trying to do something more at this point. So that's it. That's the end of part 3, dude. We made it through, and it feels like we're finally reaching maybe the top of the mountain here, where we get to come down and like as you said, the Sanderlanche. But we have, before we go today, we have a span read that we got to get to. Are you ready?
I'm excited about this one.
Okay, and now this is a bit long, so bear with me, folks, but it's very well written, in my opinion. So this is from Giancarlo, and it reads the span read reads as follows. Okay, hello, fellow Kremlings. I write urgently to you through span read to update the hive mind about some of the happenings in our stormy planet of Roshar. As our dear and esteemed fellows, Chris Kremling. And Chris Kremling. Is it a
Chris Kremling? I'm just like,
I love it.
That's me on the weekends.
Chris Kremling and Jimmy Storm communicated to the great hive mind. There are many happenings in the planet of Roshar. The fate of our planet is being decided right underneath our tiny feet. Tiny because we're Kremlings, which is beautiful. As such, we follow the our storm blessed decree. That is, we shall pull the resources of the hive mind, and we shall theorize and theorize until we have predicted all possible futures of Roshar. Muhahaha. Ahem. Yes. In this way, I'm reading it just as it's
This is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Continue.
In this way, we may combat Odium's diagram. With our collective knowledge, we may imagine all possible futures of Roshar so that nothing is unforeseen. We may tailor our actions by weighing the probability of all events accordingly and shall thus be able to formulate our best responses to any of Odium's machinations. Hark. All right. Now we're getting to the meat of it. That was just the intro.
Oh my God. Hark. Wow.
With
It's a sea shanty.
It's so good. With that said, I shall propose my theory regarding some of the prophesied events that shall come upon Roshar. I apologize if this sounds familiar to anything said by our Kremlin comrades, Chris Kremling or Jimmy Stormblessed, our comrades, or our cromrades, if you will.
Cromrades.
Cromrades.
Oh my God.
My theory is as follows. Upon the events of the 5th book of the Stormlight Archive, it is not Kaladin that dies, but rather Syl. Dun dun dun.
Oh.
I added the dun dun dun. He didn't write that.
Okay.
I believe that it is perhaps Syl that has a greater connection to honor than Kaladin. It is perhaps this connection that will allow Kaladin to fully become honor in this 5th book. However, during some catastrophic event, the final destination ? Radiance may once again be forced to break their bonds with their spren. In such an event, Syl would die. However, I believe that when this happens, it is possible that Kaladin might be fully endowed with the title of honor. However, upon the mass death of Spren, the world will be left without any of honor's power. As such, it may be that by the end of the 5th book, Kaladin is honor. However, he would be powerless as honor. The latter half of the book's main plot thrust, I believe, will deal with how Kaladin honor brings Stormlight back into the world. I think this would set up the cosmere nicely, since we might be able to fully and intimately know all of the shards of Adon. How do you say it? Adonelsium intimately. In this case, we will have witnessed honor's journey fully. His loss and regain of power, the shards will likely later continue to interact throughout the future of the cosmere, as our comrades have also commented. I also believe that Shallan might leave Roshar, and that Dalinar will become a Forsaken or some other lieutenant of Odium. This would make way for new protagonists in the later half of the series, these probably being Lift, Renarin, Adolin, Yasna, and perhaps new characters. What do you all think? Are our imagined possible futures likely? Does our collective imagination stand a chance against the relentless armies of Odium? I hope that other members of the hive mind can fill some of the holes of their theories with their greater knowledge of the cosmere lore. Let our imaginations rise and let our theories pave the way to victory. Your friend, Giancarlo Ardent Kremling.
Oh my God. That was
tremendous, man.
You've outdone yourself. That is okay. He's set the bar high for 2024. He's the number one.
We don't even know if he still listens to the podcast. This is set back in September. I might have said something stupid that made him mad. Who knows?
I reckon what we should do is, because we ghost everybody with the hopes that we'll read your thing on the podcast. So maybe we should reply to tell people like, hey, we just read yours on the show. Because Giancarlo, mate, you
knocked it out of the park.
Honestly, everyone skipped to this part of the episode. This is where it's at, right here.
Here's the thing about it, Christian. I'm picking up what Giancarlo's putting down.
Mate, my hands are full with theories. I've got a whole bundle of theories Giancarlo branded right now. And,
he might have cracked the code. This might be a wrap.
I reckon we just shut this down. Is there more to say? The Kremlin hive mind is peaking. I'm getting a lot of in my sort of desk here with my, my feelers. I can see all the lights are popping off. People are writing in. People are confirming this theory. We've got some, competing theories coming through too. He's really sent out the memo. And what do you make of this? This is there's a lot to talk about. But I think he's, especially with like the characters, our main characters will fill up the shards of the cosmere. I think he's right.
I mean, I love the best point about this. And here's the thing about, our friend Jake said this. It's like, what theories make the story better or make the most sense for the
Mm.
story. The idea that we have seen honors fall and then rise up again to reclaim power in the sacrifice that it would be, and like we would get that full arc of honor, of the new embodiment of honor through Kaladin. That is one of, if not the most compelling driving force behind a theory I've ever seen for Stormlight. I mean, I think if it isn't true, it better be damn good, because that honestly is a compelling reason for all of this stuff to be true. I don't know. I don't know if I disagree with any of this. I mean, the one thing that's maybe a little loose is believing that Shallan might leave Roshar. Not that I don't think it will happen, but I would like to maybe see a little bit more around this, like more speculation about why or where.
Yeah.
But as far as bullet points go, I think that this is spot on, man.
This is glorious. Can you imagine selling a series of like you watch a character from the point as a slave intimately all the way up through like godhood? That would be like, does epic fantasy become more epic than that? And I think I'm like you. I'm like, I think I'd be upset if we don't get this Kaladin becoming honor, because it just feels like it makes the most sense and it makes the story as glorious as it could possibly be. But the only thing that I'm tripping on a little is like the Syl part. I like the idea of the Syl sacrifice, that Kaladin has to lose that. And you know what? The more I'm thinking about it, the more it's like I can't imagine him existing as honor with like Syl still on his shoulder. I don't know about if all Spren are going to go, but probably Syl would maybe have to go. The honor Spren would probably have to, form as one.
Yeah, I does Brandon Sanderson have it in him
to off Syl?
Yeah. I don't know if he does.
You know what it would be? It would be like all the honor Spren, have to form as one thing in the reforging of honor, and then like at times there'll be like a little like Kaladin, remember me? Like those little lines in like book 7, and we'll be like, oh my god, it's Syl.
I remember.
I
was 30
that
when that was written. Yeah,
yeah.
Now I'm old and have AARP and my 401k is shrunk. No social security for us Americans. But yeah, I mean, I think Syl would probably end up somehow coming back. I don't know. I don't have faith that Sanderson will leave anyone dead. To be honest with you, it's one of my kind of gripes. But maybe this is a sacrifice that is necessary, or maybe Syl forgets her memories with Kaladin, because we've seen her trying to struggle to remember things. That would almost be sad. Yeah. So I just really love this, and the thing that is compelling about Kaladin being honor and in this manner is the fact that we're thinking about the cosmere as a whole, and how the cosmere will have this history and this timeline that we can look at for specific points of what happened, when it happened, why did it affect the cosmere timeline, and honor's journey and honor's identity will matter in the cosmere. Like that'll be something we have to point to, and all of that lines up with also making it a good story for Stormlight. So I think those two things are bonded. I love it, dude.
Yeah, I love it too. I love it. It's 11 out of 10 span read. Kremling seal of approval. I'm handing it over. Please write us back urgently, if you will.
I'll tell you what. How do you feel about Dalinar becoming a Forsaken?
I freaking love it.
That might be the spiciest take. That might be the spiciest take in this thing.
I freaking love it. I want Dalinar to be the ultimate like Elden Ring boss, just to walk out and the music kicks in and he's like, I killed my ex-wife.
Oh,
come at me.
And he kills Navani.
Oh, can you imagine?
Sanderson,
he's going for the double. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. He would definitely not do that. I mean, I don't think that's good for the story.
The idea of Dalinar being a fallen like lord and like beacon of light would be massive.
Oh man, it would hurt to see, but I think the potential. I think we get a little excited with the whole Blackthorn energy, like returning.
Yeah. Yeah.
we're a bit like sadistic and like, maybe one more Blackthorn moment for for old time's sake. Or do we just do the heroic death angle? I think I'm a bit more excited by like evil Dalinar.
I think that maybe there's a possibility that the Blackthorn is used for good in one last hurrah, but it cost him everything kind of deal. You and I don't believe he's making it past, but if he were to make it past book 5, I think we thought of him as a Stormfather, another embodiment of the Stormfather, being like meshed with him somehow.
Yeah.
Or him going on as a Forsaken is certainly compelling.
I'm down for the Forsaken thing. I want, like, he's just got to, like, okay, the only problem with this is a lot of what our boy said in the email is very reminiscent of another Sanderson series. I'm just not going to go too deep because of I don't want to keep spoiler tagging, but it just feels like some of this is a bit of retreaded territory. And I don't want it to feel like at the end of every, big cosmere series that certain things are guaranteed.
But that could happen.
It might. And then maybe that is a selling point or like a through line or a narrative thing of like the story of the cosmere is like this. We're going to meet the shards and we're going to eventually like solve this whole mystery of like the shards and the one god and Hoyd and all that stuff. And before we get to that, we need to like see the story of all the gods from day one, which could be a cool overall thing. I think we're in that awkward phase of like, we don't really know what it is yet. Of the goal.
It's like when you grow your hair out, it's like that mid-length where you're like almost a bowl cut, but you don't have long hair, but you don't have short hair. It's the worst. Yeah,
we're in the medium hair length portion.
We're in the bowl cut stage. This is bad.
Yeah.
We're down.
And we're doing our best.
We're trying.
Luckily, people are writing in urgently trying to help us out.
I mean, the Kremling Ardents are.
Oh, that's just made me so happy. Best way to start the day.
Yeah. I honestly think we don't read any other span reads because if we don't show that excitement for the next span read, I would feel guilty.
Yeah, I was like, oh, do we do one more? But I just feel like the bar is set too high. The vibes are too good. It's just like, when George Costanza in Seinfeld, he just like, you got to leave on a high. You just say your joke and you get out of there.
It's so true, though. Dude, it's so true.
Yeah,
I've done that my whole life. I've always felt like you leave at the top. You always got to leave at the top.
Yeah. And we're at the tippity top of the mountain right here. We're at the top of Erathera right now.
We are at the top of Erathera secret spaceship.
We're about to launch, mate.
We're about to go.
But guys, look, I'm so excited for this year. This is going to be a big year for the podcast. I feel like I'm going to get a lot of new listeners. There's going to be a lot of interest in Stormlight. And I just couldn't be more excited to see everyone get involved and make this such a positive and welcoming community as we head into book 5, because guys, it's our last hurrah for quite a bit, because we're going to be doing a lot
for nearly a decade.
Yeah. So like hang on tight, because this is as exciting as it gets for quite a while. Jimmy's like, I'm dipping.
Way to end it on a low note.
Sorry. Mate, we're riding into the sunset but at full speed,
I mean, if you want to get really dark, there are going to be people who are going to enjoy this podcast that will not be around to listen to this podcast when the next book comes out. That's
Jimmy,
a dark way of thinking.
You had to go. You're just like, I'm going to drag it down into the depths.
And most likely, it's going to be me.
Mate, the show goes on with or without Jimmy, but we will have AI Jimmy ready to go.
You should get censor me then. You don't have to make so many edits in the podcast.
Yeah, like Jimmy, you've gone off again. I'll leave your depressing note in because it's just classic Jimmy. So after that high, let's hope we make it till next week.
Beautiful.
Thank you guys, as always, for joining us on this episode of Lost in Roshar. Remember, the most important chapter a man can read is the next one. We'll see you next time as we dive into the part 3 interludes.
And if you enjoyed this episode of our podcast, be sure to leave us a review on whichever platform you listen on. It helps us out tremendously. And if you have any span reads that you'd like us to check out, send them to lostandroshar@gmail.com. We'll see you next time on Lost and Roshar, and remember to keep that safe hand covered.